Right. Let's dive into a story from World War II. Um, you might think you know all about that conflict, but tonight we're going to go beyond the usual tanks and battleships and all that. We're going to uncover a story of daring and ingenuity
And girl power.
and frankly, yeah, some serious girl power. We're talking about the Night Witches,
Yeah.
an all-female Soviet air regiment that terrorized the Nazis using, wait for it, outdated biplanes.
Yeah, it's really a story that I think challenges our assumptions about what is possible in wartime. These women, they weren't flying, sleek fighter jets. They were
Right.
piloting Polikarpov Po-2s, aircraft that were originally designed for crop dusting.
Wow.
So imagine the audacity of taking on the mighty Luftwaffe in those.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, right? It's like a comic book or something.
Absolutely.
But that's what makes this story so captivating. What drove these women to volunteer for such a dangerous mission? And how did they manage to become such a formidable force?
Well, it all starts with this, remarkable woman named Marina Raskova,
Okay.
and she's often called the Soviet Amelia Earhart. She was a pioneering aviator, who was determined to prove that women could contribute just as much as men
Right.
to the war effort.
So she was like, was she kind of like their fearless leader,
Yeah,
kind of paving the way for them to
absolutely.
break into this male-dominated world?
Yeah, Raskova, she faced a significant pushback. The idea of women in combat was pretty radical
Wow.
at the time, but she was incredibly persuasive. And she eventually convinced Stalin himself
Wow.
to allow the formation of 3 all-female combat air regiments.
Convincing Stalin.
Yeah.
That's a power move right there.
Yeah, talk about, it was no easy feat,
No.
It really speaks volumes about her determination, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So how did these regiments actually come together? Did they even have any experienced pilots to start with?
Well, not really. You think about it, women weren't typically trained
Right.
as combat pilots back then. And so over 2,000 women, they volunteered. They were inspired by Raskova's vision and a fierce sense of patriotism. They were factory workers and teachers and students.
Wow.
Ordinary women who stepped up to do something really extraordinary.
I bet the training was intense.
Oh, yeah.
Learning to fly is one thing,
Yeah.
but learning to fly combat missions
Right.
in the middle of a war.
Absolutely. They trained at the Ingalls School of Aviation, and they underwent this really rigorous program.
Yeah.
That pushed them to their limits. They had to master everything from navigation and aerial combat to, aircraft maintenance and weapons handling.
Wow. All while facing that added pressure
Yes.
of proving themselves in a field that had always excluded them, right?
Exactly. And it wasn't just the training itself, They face these constant shortages of everything, proper equipment, uniforms that fit, even basic supplies. But their spirit never wavered, They were determined to prove themselves worthy of the opportunity that they had been given.
Yeah, it really sets the stage for the kind of determination that they would become famous for,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk about those planes. The Polikarpov Po-2s,
Right.
as you said, they were originally designed for, things like crop dusting. So how did they end up being used as bombers?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
The Soviet Air Force was desperately short of aircraft.
Yeah.
And the Po-2 was readily available. It was slow. It was made mostly of wood and canvas. And it could only carry a small bomb load. But it had some unexpected advantages.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of advantages could a flying tractor, possibly have in a modern war?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. So first, their wooden construction made them practically invisible to German radar, which was designed to detect metal aircraft.
So they were like stealth bombers before stealth technology
Right.
even existed.
Yeah.
It is.
Incredible.
And because they could fly so slowly,
Yeah.
they were able to operate below the stall speed of the faster German fighters.
Ah, I see.
So the Luftwaffe pilots, they simply couldn't maneuver slowly enough to target them effectively.
Yeah.
Can you imagine their frustration,
Yeah.
trying to hit a target that's practically crawling through the air?
I bet. It sounds like they turned their limitations into strengths.
Yeah.
But how did they actually carry out their attacks? Were they dropping bombs from high altitude, or was it more of a, close quarters kind of thing?
Well, that's where their tactics get really clever. They typically flew in groups of 3, and they would approach their targets under the cover of darkness. and they would cut their engines and glide silently towards enemy positions, and then release their bombs with incredible precision. So they were using a combination of stealth and surprise
Exactly.
to maximize their impact.
Exactly. And it worked brilliantly. Their targets were often enemy troop concentrations, supply depots, and other tactical objectives. They couldn't drop massive bombs like the, heavy bombers, but their pinpoint accuracy allowed them to inflict significant damage. And those missions were anything but easy.
Right.
I mean, picture this. It's the middle of the night,
Yeah.
freezing temperatures, and you're crammed into this tiny open cockpit exposed to the elements.
Well, I can only imagine. I mean, the physical and mental toughness required for that kind of flying is hard to even fathom.
It really is. I mean, they faced everything from frostbite, engine trouble, enemy fire, blinding snowstorms. Can you imagine trying to navigate by the stars?
Yeah.
When your hands are numb from the cold
Right.
and the wind is whipping through your hair?
Oh, it just sends chills down my spine just thinking about it. What kind of impact were they having on the war, though? I mean, their bombs weren't huge.
Right.
They were flying these, seemingly flimsy planes. So did the Germans even take them seriously at first?
That's the thing. I mean, the Germans, they were initially caught completely off guard.
I bet
These slow, quiet biplanes appearing out of nowhere in the dead of night. I mean, it must have seemed like something out of a nightmare.
Yeah, I can see how that would rattle even the most seasoned soldier. So how did that Night Witch's nickname come about?
Well, the Germans started calling them Nachtwechseln, which translates to night witches.
Okay.
And the Po-2s, they made this eerie whooshing sound as they glided in, almost like a whispering wind.
Oh, wow.
And then bombs would start falling seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah, I can see how that would create a sense of dread, and almost supernatural fear, right?
Yes.
So were they able to, disrupt the German war effort in any significant way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were incredibly effective at disrupting supply lines, destroying ammunition dumps, and just sowing chaos behind enemy lines.
Yeah.
Their raids, they kept the Germans on edge, forcing them to divert resources and manpower to counter these, seemingly insignificant biplanes.
Right. It's like a classic David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
Except in this case, David is a group of fearless women flying crop dusters. So what were some of the key battles or campaigns where they played a decisive role?
Well, their contributions were significant throughout the war.
Right.
But a few examples really stand out. During the Battle of the Caucasus, they were instrumental in slowing down the German advance, disrupting their logistics, and just, demoralizing their troops.
Right.
And then you have the Battle of Kursk.
Yeah, wasn't that one of the largest tank battles in history?
The largest.
And a turning point for the Night Witches.
Absolutely, yeah. They flew hundreds of sorties, targeting German panzer divisions and hindering their ability to maneuver. And their efforts, along with those of countless other Soviet soldiers, contributed to the eventual German defeat at Kursk.
Wow.
Which really marked a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front.
It's amazing to think that these women flying these, seemingly outdated planes played such a crucial role in such a massive battle. It really speaks volumes about their skill and determination. But flying night after night, mission after mission, it must have taken a toll.
It certainly did, yeah. A lot of them suffered from exhaustion, frostbite, psychological stress.
Of course.
And tragically, not all of them made it home.
Right. It's a sobering reminder, of the sacrifices made by so many during that conflict. How many of the Night Witches were lost?
Sadly, 30 of these, brave women lost their lives, including their leader, Marina Raskova.
Oh.
She died in a plane crash in 1943 while she was en route to the front lines.
Oh, that's a devastating loss. To lose, their leader, their mentor. It must have been a crushing blow. Did they ever waver in their determination?
Not at all. If anything, it strengthened their resolve.
Wow.
They continued to fly mission after mission, honoring Raskova's memory with their courage and dedication.
Wow.
Some of the pilots flew over 800 missions.
800 missions. That's astounding.
It is, yeah. And remember, each mission meant facing incredible danger. They knew the risks, yet they continued to climb into those cockpits night after night.
Talk about heroes. I mean, their bravery is just, it's awe-inspiring.
Mm.
And their impact on the war effort, I mean, dropping tons of bombs on strategic targets, disrupting enemy operations, boosting morale on the home front.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to overstate their contribution, right?
Yeah.
So did they receive any recognition
Yeah.
for their service during the war?
Yeah, they did. So 23 of the Night Witches were awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union,
Wow.
which was the highest honor bestowed by the Soviet government.
That's incredible. 23 heroes.
Mm-hmm.
But what about after the war? You know, were they celebrated as the heroes they clearly were?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But sadly, that wasn't the case. After the war, the Night Witches Regiment was disbanded, and they were largely excluded from the from official commemorations.
Really?
Yeah, they were even left out of the victory parade in Moscow.
That is just heartbreaking. I mean, after all they did, you know, risking their lives night after night to be practically erased. I mean, why do you think that happened?
Well, you know, it's a complex issue, but there was definitely a prevailing tendency at the time to downplay the contributions of
Yeah.
women in the war.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was a patriarchal society, and the dominant narrative really focused on the heroism
Yeah.
of male soldiers.
So these women who had, you know, defied expectations
Right.
and fought so bravely were essentially pushed back into like traditional roles.
In a sense, yes, it's a pattern we see
Right.
repeated throughout history. You know, the contributions of women in wartime are often overlooked or minimized.
It's a reminder that, you know, we need to be vigilant about whose stories get told.
Yeah,
And how history is written, right?
absolutely.
But thankfully, the story of the Night Witches has resurfaced
Yes,
in recent years.
it has.
And it's resonating with people. I mean, all over the world.
All over the world, yeah.
I mean, their story is an inspiration, reminding us that courage and resilience can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
It really is, and it speaks to the power of
Right.
the human spirit, you
Right.
know, the strength that can be found in unity and shared purpose,
Yeah.
and the importance of challenging these, you know, gender stereotypes.
It challenges us to look beyond the traditional narrative of war, right, and to recognize the contributions of all those who fought
Absolutely.
for freedom and justice. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
their legacy continues to inspire, you know, challenging us to be brave, to push boundaries, and to never give up on our dreams. What do you think is the most important lesson we can learn from the Night Witches?
I think their story really teaches us that heroism can come in many forms.
Right.
You know, it's not always about physical strength or these traditional notions of combat.
Right.
It's about courage, determination, and a willingness to stand up for what you believe in, even when the odds are stacked against you.
It's about, you know, finding strength in unexpected places, challenging assumptions, and using your unique abilities to make a difference.
Exactly. The Night Witches remind us that everyone has the potential to be a hero, you know,
Right.
regardless of gender, background, or the tools at their disposal.
Their story is a powerful reminder that we should never underestimate the impact
Right.
that even seemingly small acts of courage can have
Yeah.
on the course of history. What an incredible deep dive this has been, you know. The Night Witch's story is truly remarkable.
It is.
And thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive, you know, into this fascinating world
My pleasure.
of the Night Witches. It's been an eye-opening and truly inspiring journey. We hope you found it as incredible as we did.